Maya Chen stepped off the military transport shuttle, her worn combat boots hitting the familiar concrete of Earth's spaceport. After 3 years fighting the Zephyrian Empire across 12 different worlds, she was finally home. The 18-year-old veteran carried only a small duffel bag and scars that told stories most people her age couldn't imagine. The recruitment officer had promised her family would be waiting. Instead, she found an empty terminal and a message on her comm device. Her parents were at work. Her younger brother Jake was at school. There would be a celebration dinner later, but for now, she was alone with her thoughts and the strange silence of a world not under bombardment. Maya took the public transport hover bus toward her hometown of Cedar Falls. Through the window, she watched ordinary people living ordinary lives. A mother pushed a stroller while talking on her comm. An elderly man fed pigeons in a park. Teenagers laughed outside a gaming arcade. None of them knew that 6 months ago, Maya had single-handedly held off a Zephyrian assault squad while her unit evacuated wounded civilians from the mining colony of Kepler 400 RT2b. The house looked exactly the same. White picket fence, blue shutters, the oak tree she used to climb as a child. Maya's mother had kept her room untouched, hoping for her daughter's safe return. Pink walls, stuffed animals, and posters of boy bands felt like artifacts from someone else's life. At dinner, her family tried to act normal. Her father, a soft-spoken accountant, asked careful questions about her service. Her mother fussed over Maya's weight loss and the new scar across her left temple. 12-year-old Jake stared at her with wide eyes, fascinated by his sister who had become something out of his adventure holovids. "So you're going back to Jefferson High tomorrow?" her mother asked, passing the mashed potatoes. Maya nodded, though the thought made her stomach clench. "The military education credits should put me in senior year. I just need to finish the last semester to graduate." "That's wonderful, honey," her mother smiled. "You'll get to have a normal teenage experience again." Maya didn't have the heart to tell her that normal had become a foreign concept. How do you explain that you've seen solar systems burn? That you've held dying friends in your arms while plasma fire lit up alien skies? That the sound of a school bell might trigger flashbacks to evacuation alarms? That night, Maya lay in her childhood bed, staring at glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling. Sleep wouldn't come. Every small sound made her reach for the pulse rifle that wasn't there. The neighborhood was too quiet, too safe. On Proxima Station, silence meant the enemy was planning something. Jefferson High School loomed before her the next morning like a fortress made of brick and teenage anxiety. Maya wore civilian clothes that felt strange and soft after years in combat armor. Students streamed around her, chattering about homework and weekend plans and who was dating whom. Their biggest concern seemed to be whether they'd pass chemistry or if their crush would notice them. The principal, Mrs. Henderson, welcomed Maya with rehearsed sympathy and assigned her a student guide named Ashley. Ashley was everything Maya used to be, blonde, bubbly, worried about her appearance and social status. She chattered constantly as they walked through hallways decorated with motivational posters and trophy cases. "So you were really in the war?" Ashley asked, wide-eyed. "That's so intense. Was it like in the movies? Did you get to use those cool laser guns?" "Plasma rifles," Maya corrected automatically. "And no, it wasn't like the movies." Her first class was advanced literature with Mr. Garrison, a thin man with thick glasses who assigned her a seat in the back. The students were discussing a novel about teenage romance and family drama. Maya tried to focus, but the author's idea of conflict seemed absurdly trivial. The protagonist was devastated because her boyfriend had kissed another girl at a party. During chemistry, Maya completed the lab assignment in minutes. The molecular structures and chemical reactions were child's play compared to the explosive compounds she'd learned to make in the field. Her lab partner, a nervous boy named Derek, stared as she efficiently balanced equations that stumped the rest of the class. Lunch was the worst part. Maya sat alone in the cafeteria, picking at processed food that tasted like cardboard after years of military rations and occasionally fresh game from whatever world she happened to be defending. Around her, students gossiped and laughed and complained about teachers and parents and 100 tiny problems that felt meaningless. A group of girls at the next table were crying because someone had posted an embarrassing photo on social media. At another table, boys argued loudly about a sports game. Near the windows, the popular crowd held court, deciding who was worthy of their attention and who wasn't. Maya watched them all and felt like an alien studying human behavior. These people had never seen real suffering. They'd never watched friends die or made life or death decisions or felt the weight of protecting innocent lives. They lived in a bubble of safety that she and countless other soldiers had died to preserve. "Hey, you're the soldier girl, right?" Maya looked up to see a tall boy with perfectly styled hair and a Letterman jacket. Chad Morrison, if she remembered correctly. He'd been the quarterback when she left for the war, though he looked softer now, more pampered. "My name is Maya," she said quietly. Chad sat down uninvited, flanked by his usual crowd of admirers. "So, is it true you killed aliens? That's so badass. I bet the girls were all over the military guys." The way he said it made Maya's skin crawl. Like war was some kind of adventure movie, like death was entertainment. "It's not a game, Chad." "Oh, come on, don't be so serious. You're home now. Time to have some fun. Hey, there's a party at my place this weekend. You should come. I bet you've got some wild stories." Maya stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. "I'm not interested in your party." "Why? Too cool for us regular people now?" Chad's voice carried across the cafeteria, drawing stares. "Think you're better than everyone just because you played dress-up with some space guns?" The words hit Maya like a physical blow. Played dress-up. 3 years of hell, of watching good people die, of carrying the weight of humanity's survival, reduced to playing dress-up. "Take it back." Maya's voice was dangerously quiet. Chad laughed, encouraged by his audience. "What are you gonna do about it? This isn't some alien battlefield. This is high school. There are rules here." Maya felt something cold and hard settle in her chest. The same feeling she'd gotten during the siege of Vega Prime when the Zephyrians had tortured captured civilians in front of her position. The same feeling when she'd watched her squad leader die because some rear echelon officer made a stupid tactical decision. She didn't hit Chad. She didn't need to. The look in her eyes was enough to make him take a step back, his bravado cracking. Around them, the cafeteria had gone quiet. Students stared, sensing drama but not understanding the true tension in the air. "You have no idea what real rules look like," Maya said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had commanded troops under fire. "You've never had to follow orders when people's lives depended on it. You've never had to make decisions where failure meant death for everyone counting on you. So don't talk to me about rules, and don't ever make light of what we went through out there." She walked away, leaving Chad standing there looking confused and slightly afraid. The cafeteria buzzed with whispered conversations, and Maya knew she'd just painted a target on her back. In the complex social ecosystem of high school, she'd just challenged the alpha and won. That would have consequences. The rest of the day passed in a blur of stares and whispers. Teachers treated her with a mixture of respect and wariness, unsure how to handle a student who had seen more of the universe than they ever would. Students either avoided her or tried to get close enough to hear war stories. By the time Maya reached her final class, Galactic History, she was exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with physical fatigue. The teacher, Ms. Rodriguez, was discussing the early phases of the Zephyrian conflict with the detached academic tone of someone who had learned about it from textbooks. "The Battle of Ross 128 was a turning point," Ms. Rodriguez explained, pointing to a star chart. Human forces successfully repelled a Zephyrian fleet, proving that our technology could match theirs. Maya raised her hand. That's not accurate. Ms. Rodriguez paused, looking annoyed. Excuse me? The Ross 128 engagement wasn't about matching technology. The Zephyrians had superior weapons and shields. We won because Admiral Chen sacrificed 3 destroyers in a ram attack that caught them off guard. It wasn't a technological victory. It was a tactical one based on human unpredictability and willingness to take casualties. The classroom was silent. Ms. Rodriguez looked flustered. Well, I'm sure the textbook version is simplified for educational purposes. The textbook version makes it sound easy, Maya interrupted. Like we won because we were better. The truth is, we won because we were willing to die for something bigger than ourselves, and they weren't expecting that. 1,200 people died in those destroyers. They deserve to have their sacrifice remembered accurately. After class, Ms. Rodriguez asked Maya to stay behind. I appreciate your first-hand knowledge, she said carefully. But I need you to understand that disrupting the lesson plan isn't helpful for the other students. Maya stared at her. You're teaching them lies. I'm teaching them an approved curriculum designed to give them a basic understanding of recent history. Not everyone needs to know the graphic details of military operations. They should know what it costs, Maya said. They should know that their freedom isn't free and it isn't guaranteed. The Zephyrians are still out there. The war isn't over just because Earth is safe for now. Ms. Rodriguez sighed. Maya, I understand you've been through traumatic experiences. The school counselor, Mrs. Patterson, is available if you need someone to talk to, but I can't let you turn my classroom into therapy session. Maya left school that day feeling more isolated than she had in the middle of a firefight on an alien world. At least in combat, everyone understood the stakes. Here, people seemed determined to pretend the universe was safe and simple. Walking home, she passed the memorial park dedicated to local veterans. New names had been added to the wall, kids she'd gone to school with who hadn't come home. Tommy Martinez, who used to sit behind her in math class, Sarah Kim, who had been student body president, David Walsh, who had asked her to junior prom just before she enlisted. Maya traced David's name with her finger, remembering his nervous smile and the way he'd stumbled over his words. He died on Europa Station when a Zephyrian infiltration team breached the reactor core. His sacrifice had saved 30,000 civilians, but his name was just one line among many others. I didn't expect to find you here. Maya turned to see an older woman approaching. She was maybe 50, with graying hair and kind eyes that held a familiar weight. Maya recognized the look. It was the same one she saw in the mirror, the mark of someone who had seen too much. I'm Janet Walsh, the woman said. David's mother. Maya's throat tightened. I'm sorry for your loss. David was a good person. He died protecting people. Janet smiled sadly. I know. His commanding officer sent me a letter, said David volunteered for the mission, even though he knew the odds. She paused, studying Maya's face. You have the look. What look? The one my husband had when he came back from the border wars. The one I see in the mirror sometimes. You've been to places the rest of us can't understand. Maya nodded, not trusting her voice. David mentioned you in his letters, Janet continued. Said you were brave, that you looked out for the younger soldiers. That meant a lot to me. He looked out for me too, Maya managed. We all did. That's how we survived. Most of you, anyway. Janet's voice was gentle, without accusation. I imagine coming back to this must be hard. Everything seems so small after what you've seen. Maya laughed, but there was no humor in it. I feel like I'm from another planet. These kids are worried about homework and popularity contests, and I'm wondering when the next attack is coming. I keep expecting sirens. Keep listening for incoming artillery. The silence feels wrong. It gets easier, Janet said. Not better, but easier. You learn to translate between their world and yours. They need to believe in safety and normalcy. You've seen what happens when that breaks down. I don't know how to be 17 again. I don't remember how to care about the things they care about. Janet put a gentle hand on Maya's shoulder. Maybe you don't need to be 17. Maybe you just need to be yourself, the person who came back, the person David and the others fought beside. That evening, Maya sat in her room, staring at her reflection in the mirror. The girl looking back at her had seen starships burn and cities fall. She'd held the line when everything depended on it, had made decisions that saved lives and took them. She'd grown up among the stars, forged by fire and loss and the terrible beauty of the universe. Tomorrow she would go back to Jefferson High School, back to the world of lockers and lunch periods and teenage drama. She would try to find a way to exist in both worlds, the one where her experiences mattered, and the one where they were just stories to entertain or disturb people who couldn't really understand them. But tonight, she allowed herself to remember. She thought of David's laugh and Tommy's terrible jokes and Sarah's determination to make a difference. She thought of the worlds they'd saved and the people who would never know their names. She thought of the war that was still raging beyond Earth's protective fleets, where other teenagers were growing up too fast and learning what it meant to stand between civilization and chaos. Maya Chen was 17 years old, a high school senior, and a veteran of humanity's greatest war. She didn't know how to reconcile those identities, but she was determined to try. Because if she couldn't find a way to bridge that gap, if the warriors couldn't come home, then what were they really fighting for? Outside her window, the stars looked peaceful and distant. But Maya knew better. Space was vast and dangerous, full of wonders and horrors that most people would never see. She'd been out there, in the dark between worlds, and she'd helped keep the light burning. Now she had to figure out how to live with that knowledge in a world that preferred to pretend the darkness didn't exist. It would be the hardest battle she'd ever fought, because this time she would have to fight it alone. The second week at Jefferson High brought new challenges that Maya hadn't anticipated. Word had spread about her confrontation with Chad Morrison, and students now fell into distinct categories around her. Some treated her like a celebrity, begging for war stories and combat techniques. Others avoided her entirely, as if military service was contagious. The worst were those who saw her as a curiosity, a zoo animal to be studied and discussed. Maya discovered this firsthand when she overheard a conversation between two girls in the bathroom. "I heard she has nightmares and screams in her sleep," whispered Jessica Harper. "My dad says soldiers get crazy from killing people," replied her friend Megan. "He says they can snap and hurt innocent people." Maya stood frozen in the bathroom stall, listening to them discuss her like she wasn't human. When they left, she stared at herself in the mirror, wondering if they could see the damage she carried inside. Was she really that broken? That dangerous? The academic work remained laughably easy. Maya finished assignments in minutes that took other students hours. Her teachers didn't know what to do with her. Some tried to challenge her with extra work, while others seemed afraid to push too hard, as if she might explode under pressure. The real problem came during physical education. Coach Williams, a former college football player who prided himself on pushing students to their limits, decided to make Maya his special project. "Chen, since you're supposed to be this hotshot soldier, why don't you show us some of that military training?" The class was running the fitness course, a series of obstacles that were meant to be challenging for teenagers who spent most of their time sitting in classrooms. For Maya, who had trained on worlds with higher gravity and run combat courses under enemy fire, it was like a gentle warm-up. She completed the course in half the time of the fastest student, barely breathing hard. Instead of being impressed, Coach Williams seemed annoyed. "Show off! he muttered loud enough for everyone to hear. "Let's see how tough you are when things get real." Over the following days, he began singling Maya out for increasingly difficult tasks. Extra laps, additional push-ups, harder obstacle variations. He seemed to be testing her, trying to find her breaking point. The other students watched with a mixture of awe and discomfort as Maya met every challenge without complaint. The breaking point came during a self-defense demonstration. Coach Williams paired Maya with Brad Peterson, the largest boy in class and a member of the wrestling team. "Let's see some of those hand-to-hand combat skills, Chen. Peterson here thinks he can take anyone." Brad was 6'3" and weighed over 200 pounds. He'd been the regional wrestling champion and was used to dominating physical confrontations. He approached the exercise like a game, confident in his size and strength advantage. Maya tried to go easy on him. She really did. But when Brad grabbed her wrist and tried to force her into a submission hold, muscle memory took over. In one fluid motion, she broke his grip, redirected his momentum, and put him on the ground with her knee on his throat and his arm twisted behind his back. The gymnasium went silent. Brad's face was red, partly from embarrassment, and partly because Maya was controlling his breathing with precise pressure. She released him immediately and stepped back, but the damage was done. "How did you do that?" Brad gasped, rubbing his throat. Maya looked around the circle of staring faces. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to—" "Do it again," called out Ashley, her assigned guide. "That was amazing." "No," Maya said firmly. "That's not what these techniques are for." Coach Williams was staring at her with a new expression, part respect, part wariness. "Where did you learn that?" "You don't learn hand-to-hand combat from books," Maya said quietly. "You learn it when your life depends on it." The bell rang, ending the class, but Maya could feel the shift in how people looked at her. She wasn't just the girl who had been to war anymore. She was the girl who could hurt them. Lunch became a minefield. Students would approach her table with a mixture of fascination and fear. Some asked inappropriate questions about killing enemies. Others wanted to know if she had post-traumatic stress disorder. A few brave souls asked if she could teach them to fight. Maya found herself eating alone more often, seeking quiet corners where she could think without being observed. It was during one of these solitary lunches that she met another outsider. Marcus Webb sat by himself near the windows, reading a book about quantum physics. He was thin, pale, and looked like he'd never seen direct sunlight. Maya had noticed him before because he was one of the few students who didn't stare at her or try to start conversations about the war. "Mind if I sit here?" Maya asked. Marcus looked up, surprised. "You want to sit with me? Why?" "Because you're the only person in this school who hasn't asked me about my kill count or whether I've seen aliens." Marcus closed his book and smiled slightly. "I figured if you wanted to talk about it, you would. Plus, I'm more interested in the technological implications of interstellar warfare than the personal experience." They ate in comfortable silence for a while before Marcus spoke again. "I've been reading about the Zephyrian energy weapons. The plasma containment systems are fascinating from a theoretical standpoint." Maya found herself relaxing for the first time in weeks. "The theory and the reality are pretty different. Those weapons run hot enough to melt most cover materials. We had to develop new battlefield tactics just to survive the first encounters." "That makes sense. Traditional combat doctrine would be useless against energy weapons that can cut through conventional armor." Marcus paused, then asked carefully, "Is it hard, being back here? Everything must seem trivial," Maya finished. "Yes. It's hard to care about who's dating whom when you've seen entire colonies reduced to ash." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "I imagine it's like being the only adult in a room full of children. They're not stupid, just inexperienced." For the first time since returning home, Maya felt understood. Marcus didn't want war stories or demonstrations of combat skills. He just accepted that she'd been through something that changed her and didn't try to minimize or sensationalize it. Their friendship became a refuge from the constant attention and misunderstanding. Marcus was brilliant, probably the smartest person Maya had ever met, but he was also kind and thoughtful. He'd been dealing with social isolation long before Maya arrived, the price of being too smart and too different in a school that valued conformity. Together, they found ways to navigate the social complexities of Jefferson High. Maya learned to deflect inappropriate questions with humor or redirect conversations toward safer topics. Marcus helped her understand the unspoken rules of teenage social hierarchies that seemed absurd compared to military command structures. But their friendship also attracted unwanted attention. Chad Morrison and his friends didn't like seeing the school's most notorious student bonding with the resident genius. They interpreted it as some kind of threat to their social dominance. The confrontation came 3 weeks into the semester, in the hallway between classes. Chad and his crew surrounded Maya and Marcus by the lockers, blocking their path. "Well, well," Chad said with false cheer. "The soldier girl and the freak. What do you two talk about? Military experiments on nerds?" "Just leave us alone, Chad," Maya said tiredly. "We're not bothering anyone." "Actually, you are bothering people. See, some of us think it's weird how you and Webb here spend so much time together. People are starting to talk." Marcus stepped forward, which was brave considering he was half Chad's size. "What people say isn't our problem. Maybe you should focus on your own relationships." Chad's face darkened. "Did I ask for your opinion, freak? I was talking to G.I. Jane here." "Don't call him that." Maya's voice carried a warning edge that made several of Chad's friends take a step back. "Or what? You'll beat me up? This is high school, not some alien battlefield. You can't just solve everything with violence." Maya stared at him for a long moment, remembering Janet Walsh's words about translating between worlds. These students needed to believe in safety and normalcy. Chad was testing boundaries because he'd never encountered real danger, never had to face actual consequences. "You're right," she said finally. "This isn't a battlefield. It's a school. And in schools there are rules about harassment and bullying. Keep pushing, and you'll find out that the real world has consequences too." Before Chad could respond, a voice cut through the tension. "Is there a problem here?" Everyone turned to see Mrs. Patterson, the school counselor, approaching with 2 hall monitors. She was a small woman with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "No problem," Chad said quickly, his bravado evaporating. "Just talking." Mrs. Patterson's gaze swept over the group, taking in the body language and positioning. "I see. Well, the bell's about to ring. Everyone should get to class." Chad and his friends dispersed quickly, leaving Maya and Marcus alone with the counselor. "Maya, could I speak with you for a moment?" Mrs. Patterson asked. Maya followed her to the counselor's office, a small room filled with motivational posters and comfortable chairs. Mrs. Patterson closed the door and gestured for Maya to sit. "How are you adjusting to being back in school?" she asked. "Fine," Maya answered automatically. "Really? Because I've heard some concerning reports. Students say you seem isolated, that you don't participate in social activities. Teachers mention that you seem disconnected from your classmates." Maya shifted uncomfortably. "I'm just focused on my studies." Mrs. Patterson leaned forward slightly. "Maya, I want you to know that what you've been through is significant. Coming back from military service, especially combat service, is a major life transition. It's normal to feel disconnected or out of place. I'm handling it." "I'm sure you are. You've obviously learned to handle difficult situations, but you don't have to handle everything alone." Mrs. Patterson paused, choosing her words carefully. "I've worked with other veterans who returned to civilian life. The experiences you've had, they change you. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it can make reintegration challenging." Maya looked out the window at students walking between classes, laughing and talking about their simple problems. Do you think I'm dangerous? Some people seem to think veterans are ticking time bombs. Do you feel dangerous? The question caught Maya off guard. She thought about her training, her reflexes, the way she'd automatically disabled Brad Peterson. Sometimes I feel like I'm made of different stuff than them, like I'm harder, colder, like I've seen things that broke something inside me. What kinds of things? For a moment, Maya considered telling her. About the refugee ship that arrived too late at Proxima Station, its passengers already dead from Zephyrian nerve gas. About the young soldier who'd stepped on a plasma mine and disintegrated in front of her eyes. About the nights when the screaming of wounded civilians echoed in her dreams. But how could she explain that to someone who'd lived her entire life in safety? How could she make Mrs. Patterson understand the weight of decisions made in split seconds, where hesitation meant death for people counting on you? I've seen people die, Maya said simply. I've had to make choices that normal people never have to make. Sometimes I wonder if I can ever really come back from that. Mrs. Patterson nodded slowly. The fact that you're questioning it tells me you haven't lost your humanity. People who've truly been broken by violence don't worry about whether they're broken. Then why do I feel so disconnected from everything here? Why does it all seem so meaningless? Because you've experienced life at its most intense. Combat veterans often describe civilian life as feeling muted or unreal after the hypervigilance and adrenaline of warfare. It's like trying to enjoy a gentle rain after living through hurricanes. Maya considered this. It was the first explanation that actually made sense of how she felt. I want to help you find ways to bridge that gap, Mrs. Patterson continued. Not to make you forget what you've experienced, but to help you find meaning in this life too. The people here may seem naive or trivial to you, but they're the reason you fought, aren't they? To protect their right to worry about homework and relationships and all the small things that make life worth living? That afternoon, Maya walked home through the park where she'd met Janet Walsh. The memorial wall seemed different now, less like a monument to the dead and more like a reminder of purpose. These names represented people who'd made the ultimate sacrifice so that others could live normal, peaceful lives. Maybe that was the bridge she needed to build. Not to become 17 again, but to find a way to protect and nurture the innocence she'd lost. To be a guardian of normalcy rather than an outsider looking in. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Want to study for the physics test together? I promise not to ask about alien technology. Maya smiled, perhaps the first genuine smile she'd had since returning home. She typed back, sure, but I might have some interesting perspectives on energy weapon applications. At home that evening, she found her father reading in his study. He looked up as she entered, his face showing the same careful concern it had held since her return. How was school today, honey? Maya sat down across from him, really looking at her father for the first time since she'd been back. He seemed older, more fragile than she remembered. The war had aged everyone, even those who stayed safely on Earth. Dad, were you scared when I was gone? He set down his book, surprised by the direct question. Every day. Every time the news showed casualty reports, every time communication was delayed. Your mother and I, we tried to stay strong for Jake, but yes, we were terrified. I never really thought about what it was like for the families. We were so focused on the mission, on protecting people, that we didn't consider how our own people were suffering. Her father's eyes grew misty. We knew the risks when you enlisted. We also knew you were doing something important, something necessary. But knowing your child is in danger, there's no training for that. Maya reached across and took his hand. I'm sorry I put you through that. Don't be sorry for serving. Be sorry that the universe put children like you in a position where they had to grow up too fast and see too much. He squeezed her hand. But I'm proud of you. Not just for your service, but for coming home and trying to find your place here again. That might be the hardest battle of all. That night, Maya stood at her bedroom window looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the war continued. Other young men and women were facing the same impossible choices she'd faced, learning the same hard lessons about sacrifice and survival. But here, in this small suburban neighborhood, people slept safely in their beds. Children dreamed of birthday parties and summer vacations instead of evacuation routes and enemy artillery. Parents worried about grades and college applications instead of whether their children would survive to see another sunrise. Maybe that was enough. Maybe protecting that innocence, that beautiful, fragile normalcy, was worth all the sacrifices that had been made. Maya couldn't become 17 again, but she could learn to value the world that 17-year-olds lived in. Tomorrow she would go back to Jefferson High School. She would sit through classes about literature and chemistry, navigate the complex social dynamics of teenage relationships, and try to find her place in a world she'd helped save but no longer quite belonged to. It wouldn't be easy. There would be more confrontations with people like Chad Morrison, more misunderstandings and painful reminders of how different she'd become. But there would also be friendships like the one she'd found with Marcus. Moments of connection and understanding that reminded her why the fight had been worth it. Maya Chen was a warrior learning to live in peacetime. It was perhaps the greatest challenge she'd ever faced, but she was determined to meet it with the same courage and determination she'd shown among the stars. Because if she could find a way to belong to both worlds, the one shaped by war and the one protected by peace, then maybe there was hope for all the other veterans trying to come home. The crisis came 6 weeks into Maya's return to Jefferson High, on a seemingly ordinary Tuesday morning. Maya was in advanced chemistry, helping Marcus understand the molecular structure of explosive compounds, when the emergency alert system activated throughout the school. The familiar wail of warning sirens sent Maya diving for cover before her conscious mind could process what was happening. She hit the floor hard, muscle memory taking over as she rolled toward the nearest protective barrier. Around her, students screamed in confusion and panic. "Maya!" Marcus called out, his voice high with fear. "What's happening?" Maya's training kicked in automatically. She scanned the room for threats, identified exit routes, and counted potential casualties. 23 students plus the teacher, 2 windows facing the parking lot, 1 main door, no apparent immediate danger. The intercom crackled to life with Principal Henderson's voice, tight with barely controlled panic. "This is not a drill. We have reports of an unidentified spacecraft approaching Earth's atmosphere. All students and staff are to proceed immediately to the underground emergency shelters. Move quickly, but do not run. Teachers, follow Emergency Protocol 7. The words hit Maya like a physical blow. Unidentified spacecraft. After 3 years of war, that could only mean one thing. The Zephyrians had found Earth. While everyone else stood frozen in shock, Maya sprang into action. "Everyone listen to me!" Her voice carried the authority of command, cutting through the rising panic. "Form 2 lines by the door. Taller students in back, shorter ones in front. Marcus, help me organize them." "But Maya," the teacher started to protest. "Ma'am, with respect, I've done this before." Maya's tone brooked no argument. "We need to move these students to safety now." The training that had seemed like overkill in the peaceful suburbs suddenly made perfect sense. Maya guided her classmates through the evacuation procedures with calm efficiency, her mind already calculating distances, timing, and potential threats. The underground shelter beneath Jefferson High had been built during the early days of the Zephyrian conflict, when Earth's government first realized they might face invasion. Most students had never seen it before. The reinforced concrete walls and emergency supply caches spoke to a reality that their peaceful lives had allowed them to ignore. Maya found herself naturally taking charge, organizing students into groups, ensuring the injured and panicked received attention, and coordinating with teachers who were struggling to maintain order. Her fellow students looked to her with a mixture of fear and hope. suddenly understanding that her experience wasn't just interesting history, it was immediately relevant survival knowledge. "Maya, what's going to happen?" Ashley asked, her usual bubbly confidence replaced by stark terror. "I don't know," Maya answered honestly. "But these shelters are designed to protect against orbital bombardment. We're safer here than almost anywhere else on the planet." Through the shelter's communication system, they received fragmentary updates. The spacecraft had been identified as Zephyrian, but it was a single vessel, not the massive invasion fleet everyone feared. Earth's defense forces were scrambling to intercept, but the ship had appeared without warning, somehow bypassing the early warning sensor networks. Marcus sat beside Maya, his physics textbook forgotten in his lap. "How did they get through our defenses? The quantum detection arrays should have spotted them light years away." "They're adaptive," Maya said grimly. "Every time we develop new technology, they find ways around it. That's why the war has gone on so long." The lights flickered as explosions echoed through the ground above them. Emergency lighting kicked in, casting everything in an eerie red glow. Several younger students began crying, and Maya felt the familiar weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. "Listen to me, all of you," she said, raising her voice to address the entire shelter. "I know you're scared. I was scared too, the first time I faced the Zephyrians, but panic will get you killed faster than enemy fire." She stood up, and every eye in the shelter focused on her. Chad Morrison and his friends, who had spent weeks mocking her, now hung on every word. The teachers who had questioned her knowledge now looked to her for guidance. "The Zephyrians are dangerous, but they're not invincible. I've fought them on a dozen worlds, and I'm still here. Earth has the best defensive systems in human space, and our military knows how to use them. Whatever's happening up there, our people are handling it." "But what if they break through?" someone called out. Maya's expression hardened. "Then they'll have to get through me first." The simple statement, delivered with absolute conviction, seemed to calm the shelter. These students had heard Maya's war stories secondhand, but now they were seeing the warrior who had lived them. This wasn't the disconnected veteran struggling to fit in at high school. This was the soldier who had held the line when everything depended on it. The all-clear signal came 3 hours later. The single Zephyrian vessel had been destroyed by Earth's orbital defense platforms, but not before it had transmitted a message that chilled military analysts. "We know where you are now." As students filed out of the shelter, returning to a world that suddenly felt less safe, Maya found herself surrounded by classmates who saw her differently now. The girl who had seemed like an interesting curiosity was revealed as something far more significant. A guardian who had been preparing for this day all along. "Thank you," Principal Henderson said quietly as Maya passed. "Your leadership down there, it made all the difference." Maya nodded, but her mind was already elsewhere. The attack, brief as it was, had been a reconnaissance mission. The Zephyrians were probing Earth's defenses, testing response times and capabilities. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. School was canceled for the rest of the week while authorities assessed the situation. Maya spent the time monitoring military communications through channels that her veteran status still gave her access to. The news was not encouraging. The Zephyrian scout ship had been more advanced than anything previously encountered. Its stealth capabilities suggested technological improvements that could make Earth's defensive systems obsolete. Worse, intelligence analysts believed it was part of a larger strategy. The enemy was preparing for something big. Maya's family dinner that night was subdued. Her parents kept glancing at her with a mixture of pride and worry, while Jake peppered her with questions about the attack and what it meant. "Are they coming back?" he asked. Maya considered lying, giving him the comfortable reassurance that adults usually offered children. But Jake was 12 now, old enough to understand that the universe was not always safe or fair. "Probably," she said, But Earth is ready for them. We've been preparing for this since the war started. Will you have to go back? To fight, I mean? The question hung in the air like smoke. Maya looked at her parents, saw the fear in their eyes at the thought of losing her again. She thought of her classmates in the shelter, looking to her for guidance and protection. I don't know, she said finally, but if I do, it will be to protect what matters most. When Jefferson High reopened the following Monday, everything had changed. The attack had shattered the illusion of safety that had allowed students to focus on trivial concerns. Conversations now revolved around the war, defense preparations, and the frightening possibility that their quiet suburban lives could be disrupted by alien invaders. Maya found herself in an unexpected position. Students who had previously avoided her now sought her out, asking for her assessment of the situation, her thoughts on preparedness, her opinion on whether Earth could withstand a full-scale assault. Even Chad Morrison approached her with uncharacteristic humility. Maya, I wanted to apologize for being a jerk. I didn't understand what you'd been through, what you represent. I represent a lot of people who didn't make it home, Maya replied. Don't apologize to me. Honor their memory by taking this seriously. The most significant change came from the school administration. Principal Henderson called Maya to her office 3 days after classes resumed. Maya, I want to talk to you about something unusual. Given recent events, the school board has asked me to consider implementing some basic emergency preparedness training for our students. After seeing how you handled the crisis situation, they've asked if you would be willing to help develop and teach such a program. Maya was surprised. You want me to train high school students for combat? Not combat necessarily, but basic emergency procedures, leadership under pressure, threat assessment, skills that could save lives if we face another attack. You've demonstrated abilities that go far beyond what any of our regular staff can offer. Maya thought about her classmates in the shelter, their fear and confusion, their desperate need for guidance. What would this involve? We'd create a new class called Emergency Leadership and Preparedness. It would be an elective, open to seniors who are interested. You'd work with our existing staff, but you'd be the primary instructor. The school board is even willing to provide independent study credits that could help you graduate early. The offer was tempting for reasons Maya hadn't expected. Teaching other students, sharing knowledge that could save lives, finding a way to make her experience meaningful in a civilian context. It felt like a bridge between her military service and her civilian future. I'll do it, she said, but I have conditions. Such as? We do this seriously. No watered-down versions, no sugarcoating the realities. If we're going to prepare these students for the possibility of war, they need to understand what war actually means. And we include training on the psychological aspects, how to deal with fear, how to maintain hope in desperate situations, how to support each other when everything falls apart. Principal Henderson nodded. I think that can be arranged. Word of the new class spread quickly through Jefferson High. To Maya's surprise, 47 students signed up, nearly a quarter of the senior class. They came from every social group, popular kids like Ashley, academic achievers like Marcus, athletes, artists, and outcasts. The attack had shown them that their differences mattered less than their shared humanity. The first class met in the gymnasium on a Friday afternoon. Maya stood before her classmates feeling the weight of responsibility that was both familiar and new. These weren't soldiers under her command. They were civilians who had chosen to learn from her experience. Before we start, Maya said, I want you to understand something. I hope you never have to use what I'm going to teach you. I hope Earth's defenses hold, that the diplomats find a peaceful solution, that you all get to live normal, safe lives. But hope is not a strategy. Preparation is. She began with basic situational awareness. how to assess environments for potential threats, how to identify escape routes and defensive positions, how to recognize the signs of impending danger. The students listened with an intensity she'd never seen in regular classes. The most important thing to remember, Maya continued, is that in a crisis situation, panic is your greatest enemy. Fear is natural and can even be useful. It keeps you alert and gives you energy. But panic makes you stupid, and stupid gets you killed. Over the following weeks, the emergency preparedness class became the most popular elective at Jefferson High. Students learned not just practical skills like basic first aid and emergency communication, but also the mental disciplines that had kept Maya alive during 3 years of warfare. Marcus proved to be a natural at tactical thinking, his analytical mind adapting quickly to threat assessment and strategic planning. Ashley surprised everyone by excelling at crisis leadership, her natural charisma helping her keep groups calm under pressure. Even Chad Morrison threw himself into the training with dedication that impressed Maya. During a simulated evacuation exercise, he used his size and strength to help carry injured classmates, abandoning his usual self-centered behavior in favor of collective survival. "You're changing them," Mrs. Patterson observed during one of their regular counseling sessions. "Not just teaching them skills, but teaching them to see beyond themselves." Maya nodded. "When you've seen how fragile civilization really is, you understand that we're all in this together. Individual survival depends on collective survival." "And how are you doing with all this? I know taking on this teaching responsibility is significant." "For the first time since I came home, I feel useful," Maya admitted. "These students, they remind me why the war matters. They're what we're fighting to protect." The validation came sooner than anyone expected. 6 weeks into the preparedness program, another emergency struck, not alien this time, but natural. A massive earthquake hit the region, causing widespread damage and trapping students in the school building. When the shaking stopped and the dust settled, Maya's students immediately put their training into action. They organized search and rescue efforts, administered first aid to the injured, and maintained communication with emergency services. While other parts of the school descended into chaos, Maya's students created islands of calm efficiency. Marcus used his technical knowledge to assess structural damage and identify safe areas. Ashley coordinated evacuation groups, keeping panicked underclassmen calm and focused. Chad worked with other athletes to clear debris and help trapped students. When professional emergency responders arrived, they found a level of organization and competence that exceeded their expectations. The emergency preparedness students had not only managed their own safety, but had become force multipliers, helping throughout the school. "Where did these kids learn to handle a crisis like this?" asked Fire Chief Rodriguez as he surveyed the remarkably orderly evacuation. Principal Henderson pointed to Maya, who was helping load injured students into ambulances. "That young woman has been teaching them. She's a veteran of the Zephyrian conflict." The fire chief studied Maya with new respect. "She's training high school students? That's actually brilliant. These kids performed better than some of my rookie firefighters." The earthquake response became a turning point for Maya's place at Jefferson High. No longer was she seen as an outsider struggling to fit in. She had found a way to contribute her unique skills to her community, to build bridges between her military experience and civilian life. Applications for the emergency preparedness program tripled after the earthquake. Students from other schools requested transfers specifically to join Maya's classes. The state education department began developing curricula based on her program for implementation in schools throughout the region. But the most significant change was in Maya herself. She no longer felt like she was trapped between two incompatible worlds. Instead, she had created a new space where her experience as a warrior could serve her role as a protector and teacher. The war was far from over. Intelligence reports suggested the Zephyrians were massing forces for a major offensive. Earth's military leaders were preparing for the largest battle in human history. Many of Maya's former comrades were being recalled to active duty. Maya's discharge papers still gave her the option to re-enlist. Part of her felt the pull of returning to the war, rejoining the fight against humanity's greatest threat. But another part of her understood that her role now was different, but equally important. Standing in front of her emergency preparedness class on a Thursday afternoon, watching her students practice tactical communication and crisis leadership, Maya realized she had found her answer to the question that had plagued her since returning home. She couldn't be 17 again. The war had changed her permanently, given her knowledge and responsibilities that couldn't be forgotten, but she could use that change to serve a new mission, preparing the next generation to face whatever challenges the universe might bring. "Remember," she told her students as class ended, "the goal isn't to turn you into soldiers. The goal is to turn you into leaders. When crisis comes, and it will come, people will look to you for guidance. Be worthy of that trust." As students filed out, discussing their assignments and upcoming exercises, Marcus lingered behind. "Do you really think there'll be another attack?" he asked. Maya looked out the window at the peaceful suburban landscape, thinking of the intelligence reports and the gathering storm beyond Earth's protective fleets. "Yes," she said simply, "but this time, we'll be ready." That evening, Maya sat in her room writing a letter to Colonel Martinez, her former commanding officer. She declined his offer to return to active duty, explaining her new mission of training civilian leaders and preparing Earth's population for the challenges ahead. She sealed the letter and looked out at the stars, no longer feeling like an exile from the war, but like an advance guard preparing the homeland. Maya Chen had found her place in the peace she had helped create, not as a former soldier trying to forget the war, but as a warrior teaching others to carry on the fight. The girl who had come back from warfare had finally come home, and in doing so, she had made home a little safer for everyone.